This is the view from the Lowell Observatory. So pretty.
You can fall through there. How about we go back? That scares me.
This is a telescope. This is the first large telescope by person Lowell for this observatory, and it was really the first major research telescope in the southwest United States. It has a 24-inch wide lens. What that means in practical terms basically is that when you look into this telescope, you're looking at the sky pretty much as you would see it, with a pupil when it rise for 24 inches across. So that's how faint you can see when you look into this, and that's how much detail you can see. So it's obviously a pretty big expansion to human senses. This particular telescope, the lens was grounded by the Athena-Daughter lens-making company in Massachusetts. They were considered the best lens makers in the world at the time, and were really some of the best ever to live. And this is one of their masterpieces, really. The lens of this telescope is one of the finest lenses ever made. By some measures, possibly be even the finest telescope lens ever made, at least that survived modern times. So it's an amazing piece of equipment. So this telescope has also done tremendous work over the years. Again, it was built and brought here in 1896. This was the main telescope that Percival Lowell used to study Mars with. And you know, as you'll remember, he was wrong about his conclusions about Mars, but a lot of other reviews came out of that, and he was still very influential. This was also, though, the telescope that Bessel Cipher used to detect the first evidence for the expansion of the universe, and ultimately for the Big Bang Theory. Now, when Bessel Cipher was first hired here in 1901, for several years after that, and during that period, astronomers for a long time, they've been seeing all these sorts of fuzzy, spiraling things all over the place in the sky, but they didn't really know exactly what these things were. The majority opinion was that these objects were like clouds of gas, maybe stars in the process of formation, comparable distance to the other stars that we see in the sky, and we didn't really know how, big the Milky Way galaxy, the group of stars we live in was, but the prevailing opinion was that the Milky Way galaxy was probably pretty much the whole universe. Now, Percival, of course, is very interested in the evolution of planets and solar systems. You'll remember that was part of this whole thing. So he asked Bessel Cipher to try to study some of these fuzzy spiraling things in hopes of learning about how solar systems form. And now Cipher was or at least became over the years, one of the world's leading experts with the use of an instrument called a spectrograph. A spectrograph basically divides the light that we're looking at into certain colors, basically into a rainbow. By setting those colors, you can tell a lot about what we're looking at, including what something is made out of, especially gaseous objects, and also how fast something is moving toward it or away from it. So the first we'll ask Cipher to try to set some of these fuzzy parallel things with the spectrograph. But this is going to be very, very difficult work, though. It never successfully been done. But Cipher just had this amazing work ethic, and was also really very innovative, and eventually he pulled it off. And when he did, what he saw was just amazing. Now, when astronomers would measure the speeds of other stars within their own galaxy, as they have for many years up to that point, they usually measure speeds of like maybe 10 or 20 miles per second, maybe up to like 50 on the outside. I think there's one that's going like 80 miles per second. When Cipher measured the speeds of these fuzzy spiraling things, he measured speeds of hundreds, often thousands of miles per second. Speeds just vastly faster than anything else astronomers have ever seen up to that point. So, if it were just a few of these objects moving that fast, maybe that would be one thing. But for all these objects moving so fast, that very strongly implies that they couldn't be part of our galaxy, couldn't be anywhere near as close as the other stars were, but had to be much farther away. And that, really showed that these galaxies pretty much had to be full other galaxies, or that these fuzzy spiraling things pretty much had to be full other galaxies in their own rights. So that was the first really strong evidence as to what we know now our galaxies are actually other galaxies. Now, Cipher also noted that all except for a couple of the very closest looking at these objects moving away from us. And he didn't really speculate much about this part of the plan, but that was the first evidence that the universe is expanding, and ultimately the first evidence from the Big Bang Theory. Cipher's work was picked up about a decade later by a man named Edwin Hubble. Edwin Hubble gave his hand was at that time the biggest telescope in the world, the Hale telescope in Mount Wilson in California. And basically the first time seen a scene where I should say. And from those he's able to estimate their distances. And combining his distance estimates with Schleifer's velocity measurements, Hubble saw that in all cases, the farther a galaxy is, the faster it's moving away from us. A galaxy is twice as far will almost always be moving twice as fast away from us. And the only reasonable conclusion anybody's ever been able to draw from that is that the universe itself is expanding. So that's why Hubble gets a space telescope named after him, and he totally deserves it. But the first evidence that the universe is expanding, and that kind of first strong evidence that these things even are other galaxies in the first place, and all of Hubble's data for the speeds of these objects, that all came from work that Schleifer did using this telescope. Now, just a moment. Now this telescope has done lots of other sort of nuts and bolts work over the years. Please don't lean on the walls. This telescope has done lots of other sort of nuts and bolts work over the years. But the other thing I'd like to bring up while we're in here is this was also the main telescope that was used by the Apollo project to make the maps of the moon at the time of the first moon landing. That mapping was joint project between Lowell Observatory, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the U.S. Naval Observatory. But the telescopes were mostly Lowell Observatory telescopes, and this was the main one. And the drawings themselves were made both, just sitting at the telescope looking at the moon, and also a lot of the drawings were made and refined in another building about a block over that way. Use it as an office building, you'll see it to your right as you drive off the observatory ground. And all the American astronauts who landed on the moon, all the astronauts who landed on the moon, they all came here to consult with scientists, and while they were here, they also looked into this telescope, including Neil Armstrong. And, Flagstaff was very active in moon landings in a lot of other ways, too. All the astronauts trained here at Flagstaff. They practiced walking around in the spacesuits and moon buggies and whatnot. And this is also where they did a lot of the testing and redesign work for those spacesuits and moon buggies. There's actually a volcanic cinder field not far from here where the U.S. Air Force used dynamite to blow a bunch of craters to better simulate the lunar surface. So Flagstaff really played a big role in moon landings. Sorry, do you have a question?
Well, I was going to ask, you are to use this telescope. The first problem you have to counteract is the motion of the Earth, right? What's the mechanism for you to do that?
Well, right now there's an electric motor, and you can see that, right now for the telescope track with the sky, there's an electric motor, it's in there. Back in the day, they used to use a weight-driven motor, basically, which you can actually see back over here. Now, the beam that the telescope found on runs exactly parallel with the axis that the Earth spins on. So in principle, if your electricity is such a big city, all you need is that motor to move the telescope at the right rate, and that will keep it target in the sky.
When you make an observation, how long is your observation?
It could be anywhere from seconds to hours, depending on the nature of the observation. Schleifer's observations of galaxies, the exposures of the photographs, the spectrums of those galaxies, at least at first, were up to 60 hours. Now, the dome here also has a very interesting history. This telescope dome was built by a couple of bicycle repairmen named Stanley Godfrey Sykes. The Sykes were this kind of sign before the bike shop that said, makers and inventors of anything. So when Percival Lowell built this telescope, he decided to take them up on that and have them build this dome. And Stanley Sykes actually stayed on as the observatory assistant engineer for the rest of his life. Really brilliant man. Now, the way that the dome opens up in the sky is using those black doors up there. So those open outward, and that's how the telescope can point out at the sky. The top one's open with ropes and pulleys. The bottom one's open basically with repurposed airplane landing gear. So that's how the whole thing opens. Now, then the whole dome has to be able to spin around looking at different parts of the sky, and that's why the whole thing is on wheels. Now, originally the whole thing is mounted on a set of iron wheels, like this one right here. Now, these are pretty heavy, and the dome itself isn't light, so when the dome is mounted on these, moving it around is kind of a pain. It would take two people working together with a rope and pulley system, and so that was, so they look for other ways to try to do the systems over here. What we have, first, for a few years, they even tried to float the whole thing on salt water. And I thought that actually worked really well for being able to move it very easily. One person could move it around with one hand. But you'll see all these saltwater stains dripping inside the dome. Yeah. That's where that saltwater would leak. they tried really hard to fix the leaks, but they never could completely. So they had to get rid of that since full system averages a few months. What we have now is a set of 1949 Ford sedan tires. And they're driven by 3 electric motors. There's one right there, one right here, and one on the other side right here. The whole system was actually donated to the observatory by Vesel's by the same guy who discovered the first evidence for the expansion to the universe when he repaired it in 1954. So that's how this whole thing works. The whole dome, by the way, is all local wood. It's basically solid ponderous time. And that's also why it's more like an upside down bucket shape than a true dome shape. Because ponderous pine strong and wouldn't have been able to support a true dome shape. So the site splitter is designed this kind of thing instead. So that's a bit about what we're studying. Does anybody have any questions?
Where would the astronomers sit?
They would sit wherever they would need to. So you can picture the telescope can point in just about anywhere in the sky, and the fulcrum is all the way up there. So you can picture as the telescope goes lower in the sky, the angle gets higher and higher. So they would sit to look into the telescope anywhere from right down here, could all the way up to basically up to where the wheels are. And they would have ladders to be able to look into it. This blue ladder is what we use now. Now one thing I should mention before I forget. This telescope, we just finished renovating. It had been renovated for its whole life, basically 120 years. And some of the moving parts were getting pretty badly worn down. So if we didn't take some time to strip it down and renovate it, it was going to be just completely unusable within a few more months. So it's actually been down for almost 2 years. And right now, this is actually only the second or third week that we've been able to bring tourism here again. We don't quite have it ready for people to look into yet, but if all goes according to plan, and have this available for the public to look into again, starting October 3rd. So I know that's not going to necessarily just come right back out here, but after it's back up, it should be good for another century. So that's an incentive to come back if you ever have a chance. Definitely worth the sign up to do look into this.
How does the cost of renovation compare with the cost of building?
Oh, it would have been way cheaper just to buy a new one. So the telescope version in 1896 costs today's equivalent would be about $2 million. Now technology has advanced. You could buy a similarly higher telescope for much cheaper today. And observatories actually fairly rarely renovate telescopes like this one for that reason. But this telescope just has so much history behind it. It's so dear to all of us. None of us really care to just watch it get repaired like that. So we fundraise about $250,000 for people around the state around the country who felt similarly, and so we fixed that, and so we have our engineers fix it back up. Yes, any other questions?
Yes, someone over there.
So with this gas and basic structure and stuff, is this wood the original wood?
Most of it is, yeah.